In 2024, the world watched as Kenya's Gen Z shattered the myth of the apathetic youth. But as we approach 2027, a new, quieter reality has set in. The hashtags have faded and the streets are clear. To the establishment, this looks like a victory, a return to business as usual. But history tells us that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a tactical retreat. 2027 isn't just an election year. It's the moment we see if the Gen Z energy can survive the East African playbook, a system designed to tire out, price out, and eventually shut out the youth.
To understand Kenya's risk, we must look at our neighbors. In Tanzania's 2025 election, the youth were humbled by a masterclass in institutional control. Despite massive discontent, the ruling party secured a 98% victory. How? By disqualifying the opposition before the first vote was even cast and shutting down the digital town square. In Uganda's 2026 polls, we saw the shattering of hope. The state didn't just win, they made the youth feel that participation was futile. By weaponizing the law and maintaining a soldier for every bullet stance, they didn't just retain power, they demoralized the movement. In both nations, the youth were humiliated not because they lacked passion, but because they lacked a bridge from the digital square to the polling booth. The state stayed organized, the youth stayed online.
Kenya is not immune to this regional trend. The state has already begun its 2027 campaign. Their strategy isn't to fight Gen Z, it's to fragment them. First, they use the co-option card, absorbing youth voices into the very bureaucracy they protested against. Second, they rely on the voter registration crisis. While Gen Z makes up over 70% of the population, registration numbers tell a different story. If 5 million young Kenyans don't have IDs or don't show up to register, the Gen Z revolution ends before it begins. Dictatorships don't always need to steal votes, they just need to make sure the youth don't bother casting them. In the last elections, 57% of young people did not register as voters. 20% claimed that they are not interested in politics, 17% were away from the polling stations, and 2% did not have a preferred candidate. These are the mistakes that the Gen Z must avoid. If they do not learn from history, both millennials and Gen Zs will cement poor leadership, and this is exactly what benefits the aristocracy. The one thing that makes Kenya different in 2027 is that the tribal card has run out of credit. The Mtu Wetu narrative is no longer valid. Perhaps Kenyans have realized there are only two tribes in Kenya, the rich versus the poor. For the first time, the divide isn't ethnic, it's economic. Whether you are in Kisumu, Nyeri or Mombasa, the price of unga and the lack of jobs are the same. Gen Z has realized that a leader's last name doesn't pay the rent. This shift from identity politics to issue politics is the establishment's greatest fear. They want us to fight over tribes so we don't look at the budget. But in 2027, the youth are looking at the receipts. Some countries are quote-unquote lucky because they are rich in oil. The West will of course notice extrajudicial killings, corruption, and injustices.
They need democracy.
Wait a minute. Well, this help will not be available to any East African countries. GENZs, millennials, and other generations must work together to change the deep-rooted systems of impunity. Tanzania and Uganda showed us what happens when a movement stays leaderless and unregistered. It gets crushed by the weight of the system. In Kenya, the monster is watching and is determined to be in control forever. But the GENZs are silent, learning, calculating, ready to execute their plan. Kenya has a choice. 2027 is the year the youth decide if they are a moment or a movement. It's the year people move from the streets to the structures. The mandate is clear. Get the ID, get the card, get organized. Because the only way to avoid being humbled like our neighbors is to be too big to ignore. The future isn't a tweet, it's a vote. They didn't lose anything. They didn't become unpopular. Their primary mission was simple: reject the finance bill. They took to the streets and they won.
To the people of Kenya, who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members.
What followed is where many misunderstand the moment. The must go slogan did not achieve full united momentum. Not because Gen Z was weak, but because reality hit hard. Young people began withdrawing from follow-up protests as the cost became unbearable. Lives were lost. Some were abducted, never to be seen again.
After what has happened today, I feel like we've had a very big win. A very, 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 very huge win. Because we've been dealing with a regime that, number one, is very arrogant. Number two, we've been dealing with a regime that is inept. Number three, we've been dealing with a regime that is corrupt. But one thing that gives me hope, despite everything that has happened, is the fact that we saw them climb down. It might not look like a very huge achievement to some of you, but for a bill that they had sworn and showed us that they were going to pass it whether we liked it or not, the fact that they've been able to climb down to where we wanted them to come, that's a big achievement. And that means that I feel that if we go to the streets again tomorrow, we might erode whatever we've been able to get.
Fear was introduced, but defeat was not. Today, the streets may be quieter, but the resolve is louder than ever. Gen Z has not abandoned the struggle, they have shifted the battlefield. The one-term slogan lives on, and it is headed straight to 2027. This is a generation that is hard to intimidate. They have no jobs to lose, no families to protect yet, no illusions to cling to. What they do have is time. They have intelligence, they have digital power, memory, and anger that doesn't fade. Ignore them at your own risk.
Mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Yeah. Wasimuue lakini wapige hii miguu ivunjike ndio aende kotini, aende hospitali, akienda kotini.
Because the same generation that shut down the finance bill is watching, organizing, and preparing.
Msimu wa mapinduzi, msimu wa kubuni uongozi mbadala. Na katika zamu hii, katika shughuli hii, vijana wa Kenya ni wakunga. They're here to midwife the birth of a new political reality.
Yes.
And as expected, it's a bloody process. But we cannot run away from the maternity room, as bloody as it is.
We stand for a Kenya where leadership is based on accountability, integrity and service, not corruption, violence or betrayal.
Tunataka kufanya siasa za issues zetu kama wa Kenya. So we no longer want to hear leaders going to say, mukinichagua, political parties that we can work with. Serikali ya mama mboga. Serikali ya boda boda. No.
Sasa tuwezi fanya kazi na Rigiji. Sasa tuwezi fanya kazi na Matiangi. Sasa tuwezi fanya kazi na wao. Lakini ni sisi tuko mbele wao kwa nyuma
That's it for now. Please support this channel by liking the video and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.